I found the number tucked between Psalms and Proverbs, written in pencil on a torn piece of receipt paper, the ink faded, but still legible. My husband never wrote in his Bible, so I called it. And the woman who answered knew my name before I said it. Marlowe had been married to Caspian for 9 years, and in all that time she thought she knew him. His silences, his routines, the way he read his father's old Bible every Sunday morning by the window. But after he died, suddenly in a car accident 3 months ago, the house became a museum of questions she never thought to ask. The number appeared on a Wednesday afternoon while she was packing his things, and against every instinct that told her to let it go, she dialed. The voice that answered was soft, careful, and heartbreakingly familiar with grief. It belonged to a woman named Elowyn, and she had been waiting for Marlowe's call. The house had learned to be quiet without him. I noticed it most in the mornings. The way the floorboards didn't creak anymore, the way the air just sat there, waiting. 3 months since the accident. 3 months since I'd heard Caspian's footsteps in the hallway or the sound of him turning pages by the window. I was in our bedroom. His bedroom now, I guess. Though I still slept on my side of the bed, still left his pillow where it was. I told myself I was sorting through his things. That's what people do, right? After someone dies. You pack up their clothes, you decide what to keep and what to let go. But I wasn't really doing that. I was just touching things. His watch, his jacket, the cologne bottle on the dresser that still smelled like him if I closed my eyes. The Bible was on the nightstand, his father's Bible, the one with the cracked leather cover and the gold edges worn down to nothing. Caspian read it every Sunday morning, without fail. He'd sit by the window with his coffee, and he'd read. He never highlighted, never underlined, never even dog-eared a page. He treated it like it was something sacred, something you didn't mark up or bend or make your own. I picked it up. It was heavier than I remembered, or maybe I was just weaker now. I opened it slowly, carefully, the way he used to. The pages were thin, almost translucent. I could see the ghost of words bleeding through from one side to the other. Psalms, Proverbs, the books he always came back to. And that's when I saw it. A small piece of paper, torn, faded, tucked between the pages like a bookmark. I pulled it out. It was part of a receipt, the kind you get from a gas station or a grocery store. The top half was missing, but on the back, written in pencil, was a phone number. 10 digits. No name. No area code label. Just the number. I stared at it. Caspian didn't write in his Bible. He didn't leave notes in it. He didn't even let me set my coffee cup near it. So why was this here? I turned the paper over. Nothing. Just the torn edge and a few smudged letters from whatever receipt it used to be. My chest felt tight. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the Bible still open in my lap, the paper between my fingers. The house was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. I could hear everything except the answer I needed. Who did this number belong to? I told myself it didn't matter. It was probably nothing. An old friend, a co-worker, someone from church. Maybe it wasn't even Caspian's handwriting. Maybe it was his father's. Maybe it had been in that Bible for years and Caspian never even saw it. But I knew that wasn't true. Because I recognized the way the sevens were crossed. The way the threes curved at the top. It was his handwriting. I picked up my phone. I don't know why. I should have put the paper back. Closed the Bible. Walked away. But I didn't. I unlocked my screen, opened the keypad, and I typed in the number. My thumb hovered over the call button. My heart was pounding now. I could feel it in my throat, in my ears. I could feel the weight of the question pressing down on me. Why did he have this? Why didn't he tell me? I almost put the phone down. But then I thought about the last 3 months, the silence, the emptiness, the way I'd been walking through this house like a ghost, waiting for something to make sense again. And I pressed call. It rang once, twice. I held my breath. On the third ring, someone picked up. There was a pause, a soft rustling sound, like fabric against a phone. Then a voice, a woman's voice, low, steady, careful. Hello? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She waited. I swallowed, tried again. Hi, I'm sorry, I found this number and Marlowe. My blood went cold. She said my name, not as a question, as a fact. I sat there, frozen, the phone pressed against my ear, my mind racing. Who is this? I finally managed. Another pause, longer this time. Then quietly. My name is Elowen. The name meant nothing to me. I'd never heard it before. But the way she said it, like she'd been holding on to it, waiting to give it to me, made my stomach twist. How do you know my name? I asked. My voice was shaking now. She exhaled softly. Not a sigh. Something sadder. I've been waiting for you to call. I couldn't breathe. What do you mean? How do you... We should meet, she said. Her voice was gentle, but firm, like she'd thought about this moment 100 times. There are things about Caspian you need to know. The room tilted. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to throw the phone across the room and pretend I'd never found that number, but I couldn't move. What things? I whispered. Silence. Then, not over the phone. Please, just meet me. Tomorrow. I'll send you the address. And before I could say anything else, the line went dead. I sat there, staring at the screen. My hands were shaking. The Bible was still open in my lap. The torn piece of paper was still between my fingers, and somewhere, in a part of my mind I didn't want to look at yet, I knew. Everything I thought I knew about my husband was about to fall apart. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her voice in my head, the way she said my name, like she'd been practicing it, like she'd known somehow that I would call. Elowen. The name sat in my chest like a stone. By morning, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. That grief does strange things to your mind. That maybe I'd fallen asleep with the phone in my hand and dreamed it all. But when I checked my messages, there it was. A text from the number. Cafe Mariner. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. No greeting. No explanation. Just the address. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. I should have deleted it. Blocked the number. Told myself it was a mistake, a wrong number, some kind of cruel coincidence. But I didn't. Because the truth was, I needed to know. I needed to know why a stranger had my husband's number hidden in his Bible. Why she knew my name. Why she'd been waiting for me to call. So I went. The cafe was small, the kind of place that smelled like old wood and salt air. It sat at the edge of town, right where the road curved toward the water. I'd driven past it 100 times, but never been inside. I got there early. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would give me some kind of control, some way to prepare. But when I walked in and saw her sitting by the window, I realized there was no preparing for this. She looked up, and I knew, instantly, that it was her. Elowen. She was younger than I expected. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair pulled back into a low bun. She wore a grey sweater, sleeves pushed up to her elbows. No jewellery, No makeup, just tired eyes, the kind that had seen too much and stopped trying to hide it. She didn't smile. She just nodded toward the chair across from her. I sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The cafe hummed quietly around us. The espresso machine hissed. Someone laughed at the counter. But at our table, there was only silence. Finally, she spoke. "Thank you for coming." Her voice was the same as it had been on the phone. Low, steady, careful. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She folded her hands on the table. Her fingers were long, pale, no ring. "I know this must be confusing," she said softly. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Confusing?" I repeated. My voice came out sharper than I meant it to. "You knew my name before I told you. You said you'd been waiting for me to call, so no. Confusing doesn't really cover it." She didn't flinch, just looked at me with those tired, knowing eyes. "You're right," she said. "I'm sorry. I should have explained more on the phone, but I didn't know how." "Then explain now." She hesitated. Her gaze dropped to her hands. "I knew your husband." The words landed like a punch. I felt my chest tighten, my throat close. "What do you mean you knew him?" She looked up at me then, and I saw it. The thing I'd heard beneath her voice on the phone. Grief. "We met 2 years ago," she said quietly. "He came to me for help." "Help with what?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm a private investigator." I blinked. "A what?" "I specialize in cold cases. Missing persons. Things the police have given up on." My mind was spinning. Why would Caspian need a private investigator? Elowen's jaw tightened. She looked out the window, toward the water. "He wanted me to look into his father's death." The air left the room. I stared at her. "His father died 15 years ago," I said slowly. "It was a suicide." She turned back to me. Her eyes were steady, sad. "That's what the police said." "What are you talking about?" "Caspian didn't believe it," she said. "He thought someone killed him and made it look like he took his own life." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. "That's insane," I whispered. "Caspian never said anything about—" "I know. He would have told me. He didn't want to pull you into it." "Into what?" Elowen reached into the bag beside her chair. She pulled out a folder, thin, worn at the edges. She set it on the table between us. "He spent 2 years gathering evidence," she said quietly. "Police reports, witness statements, things that didn't add up. He was careful, methodical. He didn't want to accuse anyone until he was sure." I stared at the folder like it might bite me. "And?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper now. "And he found something." She slid the folder toward me. I didn't touch it. "What did he find?" Elowen's expression softened. But there was something else there too. Something that looked like regret. "Proof," she said, "that his father didn't kill himself. That someone else was involved." My hands were shaking now. I pressed them flat against the table to stop them. "Who?" She didn't answer right away. "I think you should read it first," she said gently. "Before I tell you the rest." "The rest." She looked at me, really looked at me. And I saw it then, the weight she'd been carrying, the reason she'd been waiting for my call. "Marlowe," she said softly. 3 days before Caspian died, he told me he thought someone was following him." The world tilted. "What?" "He said he was being watched, that someone knew what he was doing." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. "I told him to go to the police," she continued. Her voice cracked just slightly. But he said he needed more proof. Something undeniable. He said he was close. She stopped. I waited. And then he was gone. The words hung in the air between us. I felt something break inside me. Something I didn't know was still holding on. You think someone killed him? I whispered. Elowyn didn't look away. I think, she said carefully, that you deserve to know the truth. She stood up, left the folder on the table. Read it, she said, and when you're ready, call me. She walked toward the door. I sat there, frozen, staring at the folder. At the answers I wasn't sure I wanted, but knew I couldn't walk away from. I brought the folder home. I set it on the kitchen table and stared at it for an hour. I didn't open it. I made tea, let it go cold, made more. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, my own heartbeat. I kept thinking about what Elowyn said. He didn't want to pull you into it, but I was in it now, whether I wanted to be or not. I finally went to bed around midnight, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, replaying the conversation. Every word, every pause. The way Elowyn's voice had cracked when she said Caspian's name. The way she looked at me, like she knew something I didn't, like she was sorry for me. I tried to convince myself it was all a mistake, a prank, a wrong number, some kind of twisted coincidence, but the way she'd said my name, Marlowe, not a question, a fact. She knew me, and somehow that was the part I couldn't let go of. By morning, I was exhausted. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand, staring at Vesper's name in my contacts. Vesper had been my best friend since college. She was the one who held my hand at Caspian's funeral, the one who brought me groceries when I couldn't leave the house, the one who called every week just to make sure I was still breathing. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was her. I pressed call. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, you, she said. Her voice was warm, familiar. I was just thinking about you. I tried to speak, but my throat was tight. Marlowe? Her tone shifted. What's wrong? I took a breath. I need to talk to you. Okay, I'm listening. I didn't know where to start, so I just started. I told her about the number in the Bible, about the phone call, about Elowyn, about the folder sitting on my kitchen table that I was too afraid to open. Vesper didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then, quietly, do you think Caspian was hiding something? The question hit me like a slap. I wanted to say no. I wanted to defend him, to tell her that Caspian was honest and good and that he would never keep secrets from me. But I couldn't, because the truth was, I didn't know. I don't know, I whispered. Vesper was quiet for a moment. Marlowe, she said gently, I'm not trying to make this harder, but you have to ask yourself, were there things that didn't make sense? Things you maybe ignored because it was easier? I closed my eyes, and I saw it. All of it. The late-night drives he'd take. Alone. He'd say he needed to clear his head, that he just needed to think. And I believed him, because I loved him, because I trusted him. The phone calls he'd step outside to take. He'd say it was work, or his mum, or nothing important. And I never pushed, because I didn't want to be that wife, the one who questioned everything. The way he'd sometimes look at me, like he was apologizing for something I didn't understand. I thought it was grief, for his father, for the life he'd lost. But what if it wasn't? What if it was guilt? Marlowe? Vesper's voice pulled me back. Yeah, I said. My voice was shaking now. Yeah, there were things. She exhaled softly. Then maybe you need to meet with her, she said. Maybe you need to know. I'm scared, I admitted. I know. What if it changes everything? Vesper paused. It already has, she said gently. I opened the folder that afternoon. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Inside were photocopies, police reports, witness statements, photographs. I spread them out on the table. There was a picture of Thaddeus, Caspian's father. I'd only seen a few photos of him before. Caspian didn't like to talk about him. But here he was, smiling, alive. I looked at the police report next. Cause of death: self-inflicted gunshot wound. No signs of struggle. Note found at the scene. I flipped to the next page. A photocopy of the note. It was short, just a few lines. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Please forgive me. It was typed, not handwritten. I stared at it. Why would someone type a suicide note? I kept reading. There were inconsistencies, small things. A witness who said they saw someone leaving Thaddeus's house the night he died. But the police never followed up. A neighbour who heard shouting. But it wasn't in the report. And then, at the bottom of the stack, I found something else. A letter, handwritten this time, addressed to Caspian, dated 1 week before Thaddeus died. I picked it up with trembling hands. Caspian, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I need you to know. I would never leave you, not by choice. If they tell you I did this to myself, don't believe them. There are people who want me gone, people I trusted. I'm trying to protect you. But if I can't, you have to finish this. You have to find the truth. I love you. I'm sorry. Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I set it down. And I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally understood. Caspian had been carrying this for years, alone, and I never knew. I called Elowen that night. She answered on the first ring. I read it, I said. Okay. I need to know everything. There was a pause. Are you sure? I looked at the letter, at Thaddeus's handwriting, at the words Caspian must have read 100 times. You have to finish this. Yes, I said. I'm sure. Then let's meet again, Elowen said quietly. Tomorrow. Same place. Okay. She hesitated. Marlowe? Yeah? I'm glad you called. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just hung up and sat there in the quiet, knowing that tomorrow everything would change. Again. I got there 20 minutes early. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would help. That if I was there first, I'd have some kind of control over what happened next. But sitting in that cafe, watching the door, waiting, I realized there was no controlling this. The cafe was small, tucked into the edge of town where the road curved toward the water, the kind of place that had been there forever. Wooden tables worn smooth by years of elbows and coffee cups. Windows that looked out at the grey stretch of ocean. It smelled like salt and old wood. And something else I couldn't name. I ordered tea I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. The waitress brought it over with a tired smile. I thanked her. Wrapped my fingers around the cup. It was too hot to drink, but I held it anyway. The door opened. I looked up, and there she was. Elowen. She stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room. When her eyes found mine, she didn't smile, just nodded. Like we'd done this 100 times before. She walked over, sat down across from me, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. She looked ordinary. I don't know what I expected. Someone dramatic, maybe. Someone who looked like a secret. But Elowen just looked tired, mid-30s. Dark hair pulled back into a low bun, a grey sweater, no jewellery, no makeup. But her eyes carried something heavy. Something that made me think she'd lost something she'd never get back. She folded her hands on the table. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice yet. She glanced at the tea in front of me. "Do you want anything else? Food? Or—" "No," I said, too quickly. I need you to tell me what's going on." She looked down at her hands. "I know," she said. "I will." But she didn't start right away. She just sat there, like she was trying to figure out where to begin. Finally, she looked up. "I knew your husband," she said. The words landed heavy between us. I felt my chest tighten. "You said that on the phone?" "I know, but I need you to understand." She paused, took a breath. "It wasn't what you might think." "What does that mean?" "It wasn't an affair." I hadn't let myself think that word yet, but hearing her say it out loud made something twist inside me. "Then what was it?" I asked. She met my eyes. "He hired me." I blinked. "Hired you?" "Yes." "For what?" She hesitated. Then, "To investigate his father's death." I stared at her. "He came to me 2 years ago," she continued. "He'd been looking for someone who specialized in cold cases, someone who could look at things the police missed." "Why?" "Because he didn't believe his father killed himself." I felt the air leave the room. "He never told me that," I whispered. "I know." "Why wouldn't he tell me?" Elowen's expression softened. "Because he didn't want to pull you into it," she said gently. "He thought if he could just find the truth, prove what really happened, then he could let it go. And you'd never have to carry it with him." I looked away. Out the window. At the water. "But he couldn't let it go," I said quietly. "No," Elowen said. "He couldn't." She told me everything then. How Caspian had come to her office with a box of old documents, police reports, photos, his father's letter. How he'd spent months going over every detail, every inconsistency, every unanswered question. How he'd been so careful, so methodical. "He didn't want to accuse anyone without proof," Elowen said. "He wanted to be sure." "And was he?" I asked. "Sure?" She nodded slowly. "He found something, a few months ago. Evidence that pointed to someone specific." "Who?" She looked at me for a long moment. "A man named Vincent Greer. He was your father-in-law's business partner." The name meant nothing to me. "Caspian never mentioned him," I said. "He wouldn't have." "Vincent disappeared from Caspian's life after Thaddeus died, moved away, started over somewhere else." "Why would he kill Thaddeus?" "Money," Elowen said simply. "Thaddeus had life insurance, a lot of it, and Vincent was the beneficiary of a business clause that paid out if Thaddeus died." I felt sick. "So, Caspian thought—" "He thought Vincent killed his father and made it look like suicide." I pressed my hands flat on the table, trying to steady myself. "Did he confront him?" Elowen's jaw tightened. "No. He wanted more proof first. Something undeniable." "And?" She looked down. "And then he died." The words hung there. I couldn't breathe. "You think—" I started, but I couldn't finish. Elowen looked up at me. Her eyes were wet now. "3 days before the accident," she said quietly, "Caspian called me. He said he thought someone was following him, that someone knew what he was doing. My hands started shaking. I told him to go to the police, she continued. Her voice cracked. I begged him, but he said he was close, that he just needed a little more time. She stopped. I waited. I should have pushed harder, she whispered. I should have. What are you saying? I interrupted. My voice was barely audible. She looked at me, really looked at me. I'm saying your husband was trying to protect you, she said, and I think it's what killed him. I don't remember leaving the cafe. I don't remember driving home. I just remember sitting in my car in the driveway, staring at the house where Caspian and I had lived, where we'd made breakfast and argued about nothing and fallen asleep on the couch. The house that suddenly felt like it belonged to a stranger. Because the man I thought I knew, the man I thought I'd married, had been living a completely different life, and I never saw it. I sat there until the sun started to set, until the sky turned pink and gold, until I couldn't avoid it anymore. I had to go inside. I had to face what came next. The folder sat between us like a third person at the table. Elowen hadn't touched it yet, just kept her hands folded, waiting. I stared at it. Brown, worn at the edges, the kind of folder you'd find in a filing cabinet that hadn't been opened in years. But this one had been opened. Many times. What's in there? I finally asked. Elowen looked at me. Everything Caspian found, she said quietly. Everything we found together. I swallowed. About his father. Yes. I wanted to reach for it, and I wanted to run. Elowen must have seen it on my face, because she leaned forward slightly. You don't have to look at it now, she said gently. You can take it home. Read it when you're ready. No, I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. I need to see it. Now. She nodded. Then she slid the folder across the table. I opened it. The first thing I saw was a photograph, black and white. Old. A man standing in front of a house, smiling. Thaddeus. Caspian's father. I'd only seen a few pictures of him before. Caspian didn't keep many around the house. Didn't talk about him much. I always thought it was because the grief was too heavy. But now I wondered if it was something else. I set the photo aside. Underneath were papers, photocopies, mostly. Police reports, witness statements, incident logs. I scanned the first page. Date of incident, March 14th, 2010. Victim, Thaddeus Hale. Cause of death, self-inflicted gunshot wound. Location, victim's residence. No signs of forced entry. No signs of struggle. I felt my chest tighten. I flipped to the next page, a copy of the suicide note. Typed, not handwritten. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Please forgive me. Short, impersonal. I stared at it. Why is it typed? I asked. Elowen's expression didn't change. That's one of the things Caspian questioned, she said. People don't type suicide notes. Not usually. I kept reading. There were witness statements. A neighbor who heard a car leave around the time of death. But no follow-up. Another neighbor who said Thaddeus had seemed fine the day before. Happy, even. And then, a note at the bottom of one report. Victim's son, Caspian Hale, age 19, states he does not believe his father would take his own life. No evidence to support claim. Case closed. I felt something crack inside me. Caspian had tried to tell them, and no one listened. He came to me 2 years ago, Elowen said quietly. I looked up. She was watching me, her eyes soft, sad. He'd been carrying this for 15 years, she continued, and he finally decided he couldn't carry it alone anymore. So he came to you? Yes. Why you? Because I specialize in cases like this. Cold cases. Things the police have given up on. I looked back down at the folder. What did you find? Elowen hesitated. Small things, she said. Circumstantial. But enough. Enough for what? Enough to suggest Caspian was right. I felt my hands start to shake. You think someone killed him? I think it's possible. Who? She reached into the folder, pulled out another sheet of paper, a photocopy of a business document. Thaddeus had a business partner, she said. A man named Vincent Greer. I stared at the name. Caspian never mentioned him. He wouldn't have. Vincent left town after Thaddeus died, started over somewhere else. Why? Elowen's jaw tightened. Because he had a reason to want Thaddeus gone. She pointed to a line in the document. In the event of death, all business assets and insurance payouts transfer to surviving partner. I read it twice. How much? I asked. $500,000? The air left the room. And the police never looked into him? They ruled it a suicide within 48 hours, Elowen said. They didn't see a reason to. I felt sick. But Caspian did. Yes. I flipped through more pages. There were notes in Caspian's handwriting, dates, names, questions. Why was the note typed? Who was the last person to see him alive? Where was Vincent the night he died? I traced my fingers over the words. This was what he'd been doing. All those late nights, all those drives, all those phone calls he took outside. He'd been trying to find the truth, and I never knew. Why didn't he tell me? I whispered. Elowen's expression softened. Because he loved you, she said quietly. I looked up at her. He didn't want to pull you into this, she continued. He thought if he could just find the proof, if he could just finish what his father started, then he could let it go, and you'd never have to carry it with him. Tears burned behind my eyes. But he couldn't let it go, I said. No, Elowen said. He couldn't. I closed the folder. My hands were still shaking. You said he found something, I said. A few months ago. What was it? Elowen looked down. A witness, she said. Someone who saw Vincent at Thaddeus's house the night he died. Did Caspian talk to them? Yes. And? And they confirmed it. Vincent was there. He lied to the police. I felt my heart pounding. So Caspian had proof. He had enough to reopen the case. Then why didn't he? Elowen's eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Regret, guilt, grief. Because 3 days later, she said quietly, he was dead. I sat there, staring at the folder, at the life Caspian had been living without me, at the truth he'd been chasing, at the danger he'd walked into. Alone. You think Vincent killed him too? I said. It wasn't a question. Elowen didn't answer right away, but when she finally looked at me, I saw it in her eyes. I think, she said carefully, that Caspian got too close, and someone wanted him to stop. I felt the world tilt. Everything I thought I knew, everything I thought was true, was a lie. Elowen reached across the table, put her hand over mine. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I pulled my hand back, stood up. I need to go, I said. Marlo, I need to think. She nodded. I grabbed the folder, and I walked out, into the cold, into the quiet, into a life I didn't recognize anymore. I don't remember the drive home. I must have stopped at red lights, must have turned at the right streets, must have parked in the driveway. But I don't remember any of it. I just remember sitting in the car, engine off, keys still in the ignition. The folder was on the passenger seat, heavy, like it weighed more than paper should. I stared at it for a long time. Then I picked it up, and I went inside. The house was dark. I didn't turn on the lights. Just walked through the living room, past the kitchen, into the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, my side, not his, and I opened the folder again. The streetlight outside cast a pale glow through the window, just enough to see by. I spread the papers out around me. Police reports, witness statements, photographs. And I started reading. Really reading this time. Thaddeus. I'd only known him through stories. Caspian didn't talk about him much, and when he did, it was always brief, distant, like he was talking about someone he'd known a long time ago, but couldn't quite remember anymore. I always thought it was grief, the kind that sits so deep you can't touch it without breaking, but now I wondered if it was something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear. I looked at the photograph again. Thaddeus standing in front of a house, smiling. He looked like Caspian. Same eyes, same jawline. I wondered what kind of man he'd been. If he'd been kind. If he'd been careful. If he'd known, at the end, what was coming. I read through the police report again. Slowly this time. There were inconsistencies, small things, the kind of things you'd miss if you weren't looking. A neighbour reported hearing a car leave around 11 p.m., but the estimated time of death was 10:30 p.m. Whose car? No follow-up. Another neighbour said they saw someone at Thaddeus's door earlier that evening. A man. Tall. Dark coat. But there was no record of anyone being interviewed. No description. No name. Just a note in the margin. Likely irrelevant. I stared at that word. Irrelevant. How do you decide what's irrelevant when someone's dead? I kept reading. There was a copy of the suicide note. Typed. Impersonal. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Please forgive me. But underneath it, someone had written a note in pen. Handwriting analysis. Inconclusive. Victim did not own a typewriter. I read it twice. He didn't own a typewriter. So, where did the note come from? I flipped to the next page. A forensic report. No gunpowder residue found on victim's hands. I stopped. Read it again. No gunpowder residue. If he'd fired the gun, if he'd held it, there should have been residue. But there wasn't. My hands started shaking. I kept going, deeper into the stack. And then, at the bottom, I found it. A photocopy of a letter. Handwritten this time. The ink was faded, but I could still read it. It was addressed to Caspian, dated 1 week before Thaddeus died. I held it up to the light. And I read, Caspian, I'm writing this because I need you to know the truth, in case something happens, in case I can't tell you myself. There are people who want me gone, people I trusted. I've made mistakes, business mistakes, and now I'm paying for them. But I want you to know, if anything happens to me, don't let them tell you it was my choice. I would never leave you. Not like that. Not ever. You're the best thing I've ever done. And I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. I love you. Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I set it down. And I cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears that I couldn't stop. Because I finally understood. Caspian had been carrying this for 15 years. This letter. This doubt. This weight. And he never told me. He never let me help him carry it. I thought about all the times he'd seemed distant. The nights he couldn't sleep. The way he'd stare out the window like he was looking for something that wasn't there. I thought it was grief. But it was more than that. It was guilt. Because his father had warned him, and he hadn't been able to stop it. And now Caspian was gone too. I picked up the letter again, ran my fingers over the words. I would never leave you. Thaddeus had written that to Caspian, and Caspian had spent his whole life trying to prove it, trying to find the truth, trying to finish what his father couldn't. And it killed him. I was sure of it now. I gathered the papers, put them back in the folder. My hands were steadier now, because I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let Caspian's death be another closed case, another unanswered question. He'd spent 15 years carrying his father's silence, and I wasn't going to let him carry it alone anymore, even if he was gone, even if it was too late. I was going to finish this. For him, for Thaddeus, for the truth. I stood up, walked to the window. The street was empty, quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something. I looked down at the folder in my hands, and I whispered into the dark, I'm going to find out what happened to you. The house didn't answer, but I felt it listening, and for the first time in 3 months, I didn't feel alone. I called Elowen the next morning. She answered on the second ring. Marlowe? I need to know everything, I said. No greeting, no small talk, just the truth. There was a pause on the other end. Okay, she said quietly. Where do you want to meet? Anywhere. I don't care. Just soon. Give me an hour. We met at the same cafe. I got there first again. But this time I wasn't nervous. I was angry. Angry at Caspian for keeping this from me. Angry at myself for not seeing it. Angry at whoever had taken him from me. When Elowen walked in, she looked tired, like she hadn't slept either. She sat down across from me. You read everything, she said, not a question. Yes. And? And I need to know who did this. She nodded slowly. Vincent Greer. The name hung between us. Tell me about him, I said. Elowen folded her hands on the table. He was Thaddeus's business partner, she began. They ran a construction company together. Small operation, but profitable. And when Thaddeus died, Vincent inherited everything. The business, the assets, the life insurance payout. How much? $500,000. I felt my jaw tighten. The police didn't think that was suspicious? They ruled it a suicide within 48 hours, Elowen said. They didn't see a reason to dig deeper. But Caspian did. Yes. She told me everything then. How Caspian had spent months tracking down old employees, people who'd worked with Thaddeus and Vincent, how he'd found inconsistencies in the financial records, money that had gone missing in the weeks before Thaddeus died, how he'd discovered that Vincent had been in debt. Serious debt, the kind that makes people desperate. Caspian thought Vincent killed Thaddeus to get out from under it, Elowen said. Did he have proof? He was close. He found a witness, someone who saw Vincent at Thaddeus's house the night he died. Vincent told the police he was out of town, but he wasn't. I leaned forward. So Caspian had him. Elowen's expression darkened. He thought he did. What does that mean? She looked down at her hands. It means Caspian was planning to confront him, to get a confession, or at least enough to take to the police. When? He didn't say, but he was getting ready, gathering everything he needed. I felt my chest tighten. And then? Elowen looked up at me. And then, a week before the accident, he called me. Her voice was quieter now, careful. He said he thought someone was following him. The words landed like stones. Following him, I repeated. Yes. He noticed a car. Same one, different places. Always a few cars back. Did he get a plate number? No. He said he tried, but they always stayed too far away. I felt cold. What did you tell him? I told him to go to the police, to stop, to let them handle it. And? Elowen's jaw tightened. He said he couldn't. Not yet. He said he needed proof first. Something undeniable. Something they couldn't ignore. So he kept going. Yes. I closed my eyes. And 3 days later, he was dead. The silence stretched between us. I could hear the cafe around us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low murmur of conversation. But at our table there was only quiet. Finally, I opened my eyes. The police said it was an accident. Elowen nodded. Single car collision. He went off the road, hit a tree. Was he drinking? No. Speeding? No. Then how? They said he must have fallen asleep at the wheel, or been distracted. I stared at her. But you don't believe that. She met my eyes. No, she said. I don't. Why not? Because Caspian was careful. He didn't take risks, and he knew someone was watching him. I felt my hands start to shake. You think they ran him off the road? Elowen didn't answer right away, but I saw it in her eyes. I think, she said slowly, that Caspian got too close, and someone wanted him to stop. I sat back in my chair. My mind was racing. All those nights Caspian came home late. All those times he seemed distracted, distant. I thought he was grieving, but he was being hunted, and I never knew. Why didn't he tell me? I whispered. Elowen's expression softened. Because he loved you, she said gently, and he didn't want you to be afraid. I could have helped him. I know. I could have. My voice broke. Elowen reached across the table, put her hand over mine. This isn't your fault, she said quietly, but it felt like it was. I pulled my hand back, wiped my eyes. What do we do now? I asked. Elowen hesitated. We? Yes, we. She looked at me for a long moment. Marlowe, this is dangerous. If Vincent really did kill Thaddeus, if he really did run Caspian off the road, then he's not going to stop. I don't care. You should. I don't. My voice was steady now. Elowen studied me. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Then we need to be smart. We need to find proof. Real proof. Something the police can't ignore. How? We start with Vincent. We find out where he is, what he's doing, who he's talking to. And then? Elowen's eyes hardened. And then we make him answer for what he's done. I left the cafe with a plan and a name, Vincent Greer, the man in the shadows. The man who'd taken everything from me. I didn't know what I was going to do when I found him, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. I sat in my car, stared at the steering wheel, and I asked the question I'd been too afraid to ask before. Out loud this time. To the empty air. To Caspian. To whoever was listening. Do you think they killed him too? The silence didn't answer, but I already knew. Yes, they did. And I was going to prove it. I started seeing everything differently after that. The way Caspian used to hold me before he left for work. A little too tight. A little too long. I thought it was love. And maybe it was. But now I wondered if it was also fear. Fear that he wouldn't come back. Fear that he was running out of time. I replayed our life together in my mind. All the quiet moments I'd taken for granted. The mornings he'd sit by the window with his coffee and his father's Bible. I thought he was praying or reflecting. But he was carrying a secret. The nights he'd come home late, smelling like rain and exhaustion. He'd say he went for a drive, that he needed to clear his head. But he was chasing ghosts. The phone calls he'd take outside, the ones he said were work, or nothing important. But they were something. They were everything. And I never asked, I never pushed, because I trusted him. And now he was gone. And I was left holding all the pieces of a life I didn't even know he was living. I was angry. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that breaks things. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest and burns. I was angry that he didn't trust me. Angry that he thought he had to do this alone. Angry that he left me here, in this house, in this silence, with nothing but questions and a folder full of secrets. But beneath the anger was grief, and beneath the grief was love. Because even now, even knowing what I knew, I still loved him. I still missed him. I still wanted him back. But I couldn't have that. So I'd settle for the truth. Vesper called that afternoon. "How are you doing?" she asked. I almost laughed. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Have you eaten?" "I don't remember." She sighed. "Marlowe." "I'm fine, Vesper." "You're not." I didn't argue. There was a pause. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "I'm going to find him." "Find who?" "Vincent Greer." Silence. Then, "Marlowe." "No." "Yes. This is dangerous. I don't care." "You should." "I don't." My voice was steady, calm, but Vesper knew me too well. "You're angry," she said. "Yes." "And you're grieving." "Yes." "And you think finding this man is going to fix that?" I closed my eyes. "No," I said quietly. "I think finding this man is going to give me answers. And that's all I have left." Vesper was quiet for a long time. "What if you don't like what you find?" she finally asked. "I already don't like it." "What if it's worse?" "Then at least I'll know." Another pause. "Please be careful," she whispered. "I will." But we both knew I was lying. I met Elowyn again that evening, this time at her office. It was small, tucked into the second floor of an old building downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. She buzzed me in. I climbed the narrow stairs. The wood creaked under my feet. Her door was open. She was sitting at her desk, papers spread out in front of her. She looked up when I walked in. "You're sure about this?" she asked. No greeting, no preamble, just the question. "Yes," I said. She studied me for a moment, then she nodded. "Okay, sit." I sat. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. "Vincent Greer," she said. "Age 57, lives in Brookfield now, about 2 hours from here." I stared at the paper. There was a photo, printed from the internet maybe, a man with greying hair, a thin smile, eyes that didn't match it. "What does he do?" I asked. "Real estate development. He's done well for himself." With Thaddeus's money. Elowyn didn't disagree. "Does he know about Caspian?" I asked. "About the investigation?" "I don't know." Caspian was careful, but if someone was following him, then Vincent knew. Maybe. I looked at the photo again. This was the man who'd taken everything from me, my father-in-law, my husband, my life, and he was living 2 hours away, comfortable, successful, like nothing had ever happened. "What's the plan?" I asked. Elowyn leaned back in her chair. "We need proof," she said. "Real proof. Something that ties him to Thaddeus's death, or Caspian's." "How do we get that?" "We talk to him." I blinked. "You want me to talk to him?" "Not yet. I'll go first. Feel him out. See if he's willing to meet. And if he's not?" Then we find another way. I shook my head. No, I want to be there. Marlowe? I need to see him. I need to look him in the eye. Elowen hesitated. That's not a good idea. I don't care. If he knows who you are, then he knows. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. You're not going to let this go, are you? No. She nodded slowly. Okay, then we do this together. But we do it smart. We don't accuse him. We don't threaten him. We just talk, and we listen. And if he lies, Elowen's expression hardened. Then we catch him in it. We spent the next hour going over the plan. What we'd say, what we wouldn't, how we'd approach him, where we'd meet. Elowen did most of the talking. I just listened and tried to ignore the fear creeping up my spine. Because this was real now. This wasn't just a folder full of papers. This was a man who might have killed my husband, and I was about to sit across from him. When I left Elowen's office, the sun was setting. The sky was streaked with orange and pink. It was beautiful. But I didn't feel it. I just felt cold. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the photo of Vincent Greer, at his thin smile, at his empty eyes. And I made a promise. To Caspian, to Thaddeus, to myself. I wasn't going to let this go. Not for them. For me. Because I needed to know. I needed to understand. I needed the truth. Even if it broke me. I started the car, and I drove home, through the quiet streets, through the fading light, toward a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. But I didn't care. Because tomorrow, I was going to find Vincent Greer, and I was going to make him answer for what he'd done. The building was glass and steel, modern, expensive, the kind of place that made you feel small just walking through the doors. Elowen and I stood across the street, looking up at it. 5th floor, she said. Suite 502. I nodded. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. You don't have to do this, Elowen said quietly. I looked at her. Yes, I do. She studied my face. Then she nodded. I'll wait here. If you're not out in 20 minutes, I'm coming in. Okay. I started to walk away. Marlowe. I turned back. Be careful, she said. Don't let him see that you're afraid. I'm not afraid. But we both knew I was lying. The lobby was all marble and glass. A security desk sat near the elevators. A man in a uniform looked up as I approached. Can I help you? I'm here to see Vincent Greer, I said. Do you have an appointment? No? He frowned. Mr. Greer doesn't take walk-ins. Tell him it's about Thaddeus Hale. The guard hesitated. Then he picked up the phone. I waited. He spoke quietly into the receiver, listened, then looked at me. 5th floor, suite 502. Thank you. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and tried to breathe. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. I watched the numbers climb. 3, 4, 5. The doors opened. I stepped out into a quiet hallway, carpeted, tasteful art on the walls. Suite 5-2 was at the end. I walked toward it. My legs felt heavy. I stopped in front of the door, took a breath, and knocked. A voice called from inside. Come in. I opened the door. The office was large, clean. A wall of windows overlooked the city, and sitting behind a wide desk was Vincent Greer. He looked older than his photo, greying hair, lines around his eyes, but his smile was the same, thin, controlled. He stood as I walked in. Mrs. Hale, he said. Please, sit. I didn't move. You know who I am? Of course. I was very sorry to hear about Caspian. His voice was smooth, practiced, like he'd said those words before. Were you? I asked. His smile didn't falter. Please, he said again. Sit. I sat. He sat back down, folded his hands on the desk. What can I do for you? I looked at him, really looked at him. This was the man who'd taken everything from me, and he was sitting there like we were having tea. I want to talk about Thaddeus, I said. His expression didn't change. Thaddeus, he repeated. That was a long time ago. 15 years. Yes. You were his business partner. I was. And when he died, you inherited everything. Vincent's smile thinned. I inherited the business, yes. As per our agreement. And the life insurance. That too. He said it so casually, like it was nothing. $500,000, I said. Is there a question in there, Mrs. Hale? I leaned forward. Did you kill him? The silence stretched. Vincent didn't blink, didn't flinch. He just looked at me. Then he laughed, soft, almost kind. Mrs. Hale, he said gently, I understand you're grieving. Losing a husband is... Answer the question. His smile faded, just slightly. No, he said. I did not kill Thaddeus. He took his own life. It was tragic, but it was his choice. Was it? The police seemed to think so. The police didn't look very hard. Vincent's jaw tightened. What exactly are you accusing me of? I pulled the letter from my bag, the one Thaddeus had written to Caspian. I set it on the desk. Read it, I said. He looked down at it, then back at me. What is this? A letter, from Thaddeus to Caspian, written 1 week before he died. Vincent didn't touch it. I don't see how this concerns me. He says someone wanted him dead, someone he trusted. Vincent's expression shifted, just slightly. A flicker of something behind his eyes. Mrs. Hale, he said slowly, you're looking for meaning where there is none. Thaddeus was troubled. He made poor decisions, and in the end, he couldn't live with them. You were at his house the night he died. His eyes narrowed. Who told you that? A witness. There was no witness. There was. You lied to the police. You said you were out of town. Vincent stood. Slowly. He walked to the window, looked out at the city. You should be careful, Mrs. Hale, he said quietly. Is that a threat? He turned back to me. It's advice. I stood too. Caspian was investigating you, I said. He found evidence. He was going to take it to the police. Vincent's expression was unreadable. And where is he now? He asked softly. The words hit me like a slap. He's dead, I whispered. Yes, he is. Vincent walked back to his desk, sat down. I'm very sorry for your loss, he said, but I think it's time for you to go. I didn't move. Did you kill him too? I asked. Vincent looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes. Not guilt, not fear, something colder. Your husband? He said slowly. Should have left the past alone. He paused. I hope you're smarter than he was. I left. I don't remember walking out of his office. Don't remember getting in the elevator. Don't remember crossing the lobby. I just remember standing on the sidewalk. Elowen was beside me. What happened? She asked. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, shaking, because I'd looked into Vincent Greer's eyes, and I'd seen the truth. He'd killed them, both of them, and he was going to get away with it, unless I stopped him. Elowen put her hand on my arm. Marlowe, talk to me. I looked at her. He did it, I said. Did he admit it? No, but he didn't have to. I took a breath. He threatened me. Elowen's expression hardened. What did he say? I repeated his words. Your husband should have left the past alone. I hope you're smarter than he was. Eloan was quiet for a moment. Then, we need to go to the police. With what? We don't have proof. We have enough to... We have nothing, I said. Just suspicions. Just theories. Then what do we do? I looked back at the building, at the glass and steel, at the man sitting in his office on the 5th floor. We find proof, I said. How? I didn't know yet, but I would, because I wasn't walking away. Not now. Not ever. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Vincent's words over and over. Your husband should have left the past alone. I hope you're smarter than he was. It wasn't a threat, but it felt like one. And for the first time since this all started, I was afraid. Not just of Vincent, but of everything. The weight of what I'd uncovered, the danger of what I was doing, the possibility that I was in over my head. I thought about stopping, walking away, letting Caspian rest, letting Thaddeus rest, letting myself rest. Maybe Vincent was right. Maybe I was just grieving. Maybe I was looking for meaning where there was none. Maybe... But then I thought about Caspian, about the way he'd held me before he left that last morning. A little too tight, a little too long, like he knew, and I couldn't let it go. I got out of bed around 3 a.m. The house was dark, silent. I walked to the kitchen, made tea I wouldn't drink, just needed something to do with my hands. I stood by the window, looking out at the empty street. And I thought about Caspian's phone, his old phone, the one the police had given back to me after the accident. I'd charged it once, looked through it, but I couldn't bear to see his messages, his photos, his life frozen in time. So I'd put it in a drawer, and I hadn't touched it since. But now I wondered if I'd missed something. I went to the bedroom. Opened the drawer. The phone was there. Screen dark. I picked it up, pressed the power button. It took a moment to turn on. Then the screen lit up. His wallpaper. A photo of us. Smiling. I felt my chest tighten. I unlocked it. Went to his voicemails. There were 3. One from his mum. One from work. And one from himself. Saved 2 days before he died. My hands started shaking. I pressed play. His voice filled the room. Shaky. Urgent. Marlowe. I closed my eyes. If you're hearing this, something happened. A pause. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry for all of it. His voice cracked. But I found proof. Real proof. It's in the Bible. Look in the back. Another pause. Longer this time. I love you. I'm so sorry. The message ended. I stood there, frozen, tears streaming down my face. I grabbed the Bible. His father's Bible. The one I'd already looked through a dozen times. I opened it, flipped to the back, and there, taped inside the back cover, was a small SD card. I stared at it. How had I missed this? My hands were trembling so badly I could barely peel it off. But I did. I ran to the living room, grabbed my laptop, plugged the SD card into the reader, and waited. The files loaded, slowly, one by one. Photos, emails, financial records, spreadsheets. I opened the first photo. It was a bank statement. Thaddeus's account. Large withdrawals in the weeks before he died. Tens of thousands of dollars. All going to the same place. An account under Vincent Greer's name. I opened another file. An email. From Vincent to Thaddeus. You need to pay me back. Now. Or I'll have no choice. The date. 2 weeks before Thaddeus died. I kept clicking. More emails. More threats. Vincent had been pressuring Thaddeus, demanding money Thaddeus didn't have. I opened another folder. Police reports, the same ones I'd seen before. But these had notes, Caspian's notes, written in the margins. Why no gunpowder residue? Why was the note typed? Who was the man at the door? And then, a photo I hadn't seen before. A security camera image, grainy, time-stamped. The night Thaddeus died, a car parked outside his house. I zoomed in. The license plate was visible. I cross-referenced it with another document in the folder. Vincent Greer's car. He'd been there. The night Thaddeus died. And he'd lied about it. I kept going. There were more files. Witness statements Caspian had collected himself. A neighbour who saw Vincent leaving Thaddeus's house around 11 p.m. Another neighbour who heard shouting. A former employee who said Vincent had been desperate for money, that he'd been in debt, that Thaddeus's death had saved him. And then, at the bottom of the folder, a video file. I hesitated. Then I clicked it. The video started. It was Caspian, sitting in his car. It was dark outside, late. He looked tired, scared. "If you're watching this," he said quietly, "then I'm gone." I felt my heart break. "I'm sorry, Marlowe. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. But I couldn't. I couldn't put you in danger." He looked away, wiped his eyes. "I found everything, all the proof. Vincent killed my father. I know he did. And I think—" He stopped, took a breath. "I think he knows I know." A pause. "I've been followed. For days now. Same car. Always a few cars back." He looked directly at the camera. "If something happens to me, don't let them call it an accident. Please, don't let them bury this." His voice broke. "I love you. I'm sorry." The video ended. I sat there, staring at the screen, at Caspian's face, frozen in time, and I realized he'd known. He'd known he was in danger, and he'd left me everything I needed to finish what he started. I closed the laptop. My hands were steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by something else. Clarity, purpose. I had the proof. Everything Caspian had gathered. Everything that showed Vincent Greer had killed Thaddeus, and possibly Caspian too. I had it all. Now I just had to decide what to do with it. I looked at the clock. 4:37 a.m. I picked up my phone, called Elowen. She answered on the third ring. Groggy. "Marlowe? What?" "I found it," I said. "Found what?" "The proof. Everything. Caspian left it for me." Silence. Then, "Where are you?" "Home." "Stay there. I'm coming over." "Okay." I hung up, and I sat there in the dark, waiting, knowing that everything was about to change. Again. I took the evidence to the police the next morning. Elowen came with me. We sat in a small room with fluorescent lights and grey walls, while a detective went through everything. The photos, the emails, the financial records, Caspian's video. He didn't say much, just nodded, took notes, asked a few questions. When we were done, he looked at me. "This is going to take time," he said. "We'll need to verify everything, reopen both cases." "How long?" I asked. "Weeks, maybe months." I nodded. "But this is good," he said. "This is real evidence. You did the right thing." I didn't feel like I'd done the right thing. I just felt tired. It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of waiting. Of phone calls and follow-ups and lawyers. Of watching the news and seeing Thaddeus's name again. Caspian's name. Vincent's name. The story made headlines. Local businessman arrested in connection with 15-year-old cold case. New evidence suggests foul play in deaths of father and son. People I hadn't spoken to in months reached out, offering condolences, asking questions. I didn't answer most of them. I just waited. And then, finally, Vincent Greer was arrested. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt empty. Like I'd been holding my breath for so long that I'd forgotten how to breathe normally. Elowen called me the day it happened. "It's over," she said. "Yeah. You okay?" "I don't know." She was quiet for a moment. "You did it, Marlowe. You finished what Caspian started." "I know." But it didn't feel like enough, because Caspian was still gone, and no amount of justice was going to bring him back. I hadn't been to the cemetery since the funeral. I told myself it was because I was too busy, too overwhelmed. But the truth was, I was afraid. Afraid of what it would feel like to stand there, to see his name carved into stone, to accept that he was really gone. But now I needed to go. It was a grey afternoon, the kind where the sky and the ground blur together. I drove to the cemetery alone, parked near the entrance, and walked. I knew where he was, 3rd row, near the oak tree. I'd memorized it at the funeral. Even though I hadn't come back. I stopped in front of his headstone. "Caspian, hail, beloved husband and son." The words felt too small, too simple. For a man who'd carried so much. I knelt down, ran my fingers over the letters of his name. "Hi," I whispered. The wind moved through the trees. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come." I took a breath. "I know now. I know what you were doing. Why you kept it from me." My voice cracked. "I understand. I do. You were trying to protect me." Tears started to fall. "But I wish you'd trusted me. I wish you'd let me help you." I wiped my eyes. "I wish you were still here." I sat there for a long time, just talking to him, telling him everything. About Elowen, about Vincent, about the evidence, about how scared I'd been, how angry, how lost. "But I finished it," I said. "I finished what you started." I paused. "And I forgive you. For not telling me. For leaving me. For all of it." I pressed my hand against the stone. "I love you. I always will." I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Elowen was standing a few feet away. She didn't say anything, just walked over and stood beside me. We stood there together, 2 women bound by the same ghost. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" "For helping me. For believing me." She looked down at the headstone. "He was a good man," she said. "Yeah, he was." We stood in silence for a while. Then Elowen put her hand on my shoulder. "You're going to be okay," she said. I nodded. I didn't know if I believed her, but I wanted to. I went home as the sun was setting. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. I walked to the bedroom, picked up the Bible. His father's Bible. I'd read it so many times now, but I opened it one last time. And as I flipped through the pages, something fell out. A small piece of paper. I picked it up. It was tucked in the Psalms. I unfolded it. And I read, "Marlowe, if you're reading this, then you found everything. And I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry I made you carry this alone. But I need you to know something. You are stronger than you know. Stronger than I ever was. I'm sorry I had to leave you to prove it. I love you. Always. Caspian." I read it twice. Then I pressed the note to my chest. And I cried. Not the quiet kind. Not the kind I'd been holding back. But the kind that breaks you open. The kind that lets the grief out. The kind that finally lets you heal. I cried for Caspian. For Thaddeus. For the life we'd lost. For the truth that had cost us everything. But I also cried for myself. For the woman I'd been. and the woman I was becoming. When the tears finally stopped, I folded the note carefully, put it back in the Bible, and I closed the book. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know how to move forward. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty anymore, because I was still here, still standing, still fighting, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I walked to the window, looked out at the street. The sun had set. The sky was dark, but the street lights were on, casting a soft glow over everything. And I realized the light doesn't come all at once. It comes slowly, in small moments, in quiet breaths, in the decision to keep going, even when it hurts, even when you don't know how. I took a breath, and I whispered into the quiet, "I'm going to be okay." And for the first time, I believed it.